Alrighty, welcome back to another thrilling installment of Fraggoth Reads. I'm your intrepid narrator, Fraggoth, and today we're going to read the second to last, or penultimate, installment of Red Noise. You may notice that I've added a few extra images to the crawl. Two of them are album covers, and one of them is, I don't know. I don't know what the other one was. The weird red-shifted one. I've not actually listened to either of those albums. I told myself I would, but I haven't gotten around to it yet. The one that looks like a dude poking out of the one that looks like there's the devil fiddling while somebody screams in the prison of Frank Zappa's skull is it's French. What are you called? What are you called? I had this a second ago. No, that's definitely not it. Or I could just look at the file name. There we go. Sarcelle, I believe is... Oh, what are you? Come on, Bandcamp, cooperate with me. Give me a sec. There it is. The band is entitled Red Noise. The album is entitled Sarcelle leur chair. It has such tracks as Petit Précis d'Instruction Civique, Obsession Sexuelle Number 1, Galactic Sewer Song, Cosmic Toilet Ditty, Red Noise Live au Café des Sports, and Existential Import of the Screwdriver Eternity Twist, which are excellent song titles, I think everyone can agree. It is labeled as free jazz. I've been meaning to get around to listening to it, but I haven't. The other one, I don't know. Some guy's Red Noise album. Bill Nelson's Red Noise, Sound on Sound, which had a robot on it. Robots are cool. Anyway, so last time on Red Noise, everything happened. So it turns out that Raj Del Rio and Mary Feeney have a thing, and have had a thing for a while now. And they decide to get married, which is great. The miner is presented with a golden opportunity to kill both of them, and chooses not to do so. So then they hold a wedding ceremony and, food, drink, and everything. And then the lights go out and a sniper shot is fired, and Raj Del Rio's head is popped like a melon. Raj is gone. Long live Raj. So everybody panics, and the entire station goes on under lockdown, courtesy of one McMasters. And the miner decides it's time to get the hell out of Dodge, or at least get out of where she's stuck at the hotel, does so, and finds that someone has invaded her ship. Moreover, someone has trashed her ship. Far worse, someone has trashed her garden. You do not mess with the miner's garden. So she fixes what she can, and I believe it is now vengeance o'clock. It is time for violence. Long live violence. And with that... Oh, right, and McMasters gave her an ultimatum saying, hey, if you get out of here, I'll just let you go. Whether you believe him or not is anybody's guess, but I don't think the miner is going to play that particular game. So, let me slurp down some more water, and we will get rolling with the second to last installment of Red Noise by John P. Murphy. Sorry about that. Let's play Find the Sniper. I dropped my bookmark. It was embarrassing. The port section had exits into the back maintenance tunnels, and the miner used these to make her escape. She had food, water, her sword, and a pistol. All she needed was an actual plan. The maintenance tunnels were just old hallways, blocked off with reconfigurable walls so that visitors wouldn't get into them. Her footfalls echoed along their lengths. The fights had battered both the gangs down, and she knew they didn't have the strength to patrol, but McMaster's crew had come out fine. Minus the 6 idiots camped out at her airlock, and probably a good-sized crew guarding McMaster's himself, she still left enough to cause her trouble. She walked as quietly as she could, as quietly. She walked as quietly as she could, then, and thought as she went. Knowing that McMaster's had been behind killing Raj didn't help her unless she could prove it. She wished she'd thought to record the call. Even then, though, if she could provoke Angelica into going to war against security, that would only cement Feeney. Why should she do that if she could bring all 3 sides down? Give Herrera the clean slate he deserved. She'd studied the back passage layout earlier, and anyway, they were pretty easy to navigate. The first few intersections had had security cameras, and she'd dealt with them as she came across them, but quickly realized that they were already defunct. What a rat hole. It was station night, and the lockdown had been lifted while she'd been on her ship. Usually Herrera went back to his quarters, and she hoped that... What the hell? It was station night, and the lockdown had been lifted while she'd been on her ship. Usually Herrera went back to his quarters, and she hoped that had been the plan that night, since she didn't dare use station comms to get a hold of him. Between Angelica and McMaster's, the chance of interception was just too high. On the opposite side of the Galleria from Feeney's hotel jutted a big, blocky cluster of compartments, above the casino but not connected to it. They had been officers' quarters once upon a time, and judging by the map, those quarters had been reconfigured into damn near palatial digs. She slowed and waited against an inside wall at the sound of a footfall. A lone security guard wandered, waving a rifle like a cumbersome stick. She was in the right area, anyway. Herrera's quarters, as station master, were easy to get to, and easy to identify by the "Fuck you, McMaster's, and the horse you rode in on, or maybe the horse fucks you and I watch" graffiti. She stopped to admire the sentiment, then froze. Across from the graffiti, in the middle of the corridor wall, stood a pillar. She frowned at it, then back at the scrawl. Herrera didn't feel the need to simply express himself like that. She crept up to the pillar the long way around and pulled a mirror from her pocket. Angled down low and around, she could see it. One of McMaster's security cameras, active and pointed squarely at Herrera's handiwork. "Bless your obscene little soul," she murmured. Knowing it was there, and where, she easily knocked it out with her sword. She dashed to Herrera's door and urgently rang the bell. When he finally arrived, disheveled and sleepy, she pushed her way in. "They'll come see why the camera's disabled," she explained. He nodded and closed the door. His quarters were immense, easily bigger than her ship. A nice red and brown rug took up most of the floor, and the walls bore paintings and a few coarse woven hangings. "So what's going on?" The miner filled him in on McMaster's trashing her ship and the conversation about the sniper. "The way I figure it, whoever shot Raj was one of his guards. Who else can McMaster's trust on short notice? That means somewhere on this station is a cop with a sharpshooter's training. He scratched his chin thoughtfully. "So why come to me? What can I do?" "McMaster's works for you." He swore. "That son of a bitch, brothel-bred plague louse, works for me? Fuck! I had to... You kill that bastard. You kill him and you bring me his goddamn mustache so I can nail it to my wall. You..."
The miner held up her hands to placate him. On paper, I mean. Technically. On paper, he works for you, right?
Oh.
His mood went from furious to mild in an instant.
Sure, I fired him like 8 times.
That means you've got access to personnel records, right? A slow grin crept across his face. He had just started to dash across the room when the door chime rang. The miner nodded once at Herrera's look of warning and stepped aside into the next room.
What do you want?
She heard Herrera say. I want you to quit breaking our fucking cameras, you old asshole.
I have registered your complaint and will forward it to the appropriate department. That all?
No. The miner tensed to hear the too familiar sound of a punch landing. She heard him groan heavily, and there was a heavier thud. Now quit fucking with our cameras. And Christ, don't puke on my boots, either. She was back in the room before the door finished closing. He helped Herrera up off the floor. I'm sorry, she muttered.
Shut up,
he wheezed, and took a moment.
Not the first time these emotionally stunted ass-hair lice can't come beat me up.
He straightened himself up enough to look her in the eye, and the look on his face was defiant.
Might just be the last, though.
The miner just nodded, and eventually got the hint that he wanted to recover his breath and his dignity without her help. She stood and waited as he did some stretches, got an ice pack, then pulled up the HR info. His visibility into the system was impressive. Not just bios, but discipline records, body camera footage, even the duty roster and patrol assignments. She grinned, but first things first, figure out who they were looking for. Herrera pulled up the personnel records and dragged half of it onto a separate spot on the wall so they could look through it in parallel. She read through the dozen or so bios carefully, ranked by time on the job. The first few were pretty detailed, not exactly career law enforcement, but tours in the military or stretches with security on other stations, with dates and, in 2 cases, mild commendations. When she checked, her guess that they'd already been on the job when McMasters started proved accurate. After that, things got spottier. Military experience with start dates but no end dates, usually a sign of desertion or a covered-up expulsion. An 18-year-old claiming to be a brigadier general. The last few just had names and ages. One of them was purportedly 100 years old.
Hey,
Herrera said, tapping at one of the entries on his side.
What about this one? Gloria Settles. 5 years in the service, 3 target shooting prizes, and a sharpshooter's rating. Came on at the same time as McMasters himself.
The miner raised her eyebrow. She was about to agree when she was distracted by the entry at the bottom of Herrera's list. No bio, just a name. She tapped it and left her finger there. No, she said. This guy. An old friend. Fergus Capper tried for a good 5 minutes, leaning this way and that, digging in under the plating or kinda mashing down from above, working in vain to figure out how to scratch his balls in that damn armor, and finally gave it up for a lost cause. Captain McMasters had been pretty damn clear that they needed to wear it whenever they left the bunk room now, and after the shit he'd seen lately, he believed it. But his balls still itched. Kayla passed him a cardboard bottle of something that smelled like gun cleaner. She smirked at him like she knew what he was doing, but he'd been pretty subtle about it, so she probably didn't. He took a swig, and good Lord, was it awful. He pounded his chest, not that it helped, again, armor, and coughed. Strong stuff, huh? Kayla smirked. He smiled and raised the bottle heartily. He pretended to take another swig, numbing his tongue, and passed it on to Augie. Augie took a moment to take it, leaving Fergus to hold it out like an asshole while he dug around at his hip and came up with his stun baton. Check this out, he said, finally taking the bottle. I hit one of those shits so hard I broke the stun thing. Fergus and Kayla leaned in and made appreciative noises. It only looked a little scuffed, probably just turned it off by accident, but he'd have 2 more hours on shift with Augie, who was a pain in the ass when he got sniffy. They were supposed to be patrolling, but what the hell was there to patrol on Deck 4, anyway? Those morons had blown up their own chop shop, then killed a bunch of each other, and now were bottled up in their little hideouts. The place was a ghost town. So they were sitting in an old barber shop, drinking and relaxing and waiting for their shift to end. Fergus was the new guy, so he didn't get a chair. He had to stand leaning against the outside window.
That was something, Kayla mused. That kid getting shot?
Which one? Fergus asked.
The Del Rio kid.
Yeah, he said. Wow, hell of a shot. My money's on Feeney, Augie said. I'll bet he did it. Kayla ground. Kayla frowned.
How come?
Didn't like his granddaughter boning the enemy, or the enemy's brother. He handed her the bottle in response to her grabby hand motions. I wouldn't like that.
I bet Del Rio did it herself,
Kayla said. Fergus's skepticism reached his face, and Augie scoffed.
No, seriously.
She took a chug from the bottle and coughed.
Seriously, he turned traitor. You don't think she'd kill him for that?
She and Augie argued for a bit, and Fergus tuned out. He thought he saw movement outside the side window, and he stared for a while, but there wasn't any more. He accepted the bottle when it was finally passed to him again, and passed it on in turn.
You've been quiet,
Kayla said, and it sounded like a demand.
What do you think?
Huh?
Who killed the Del
Rio boy? Augie demanded. Feeney or his sister? Fergus frowned.
Fuck if I know.
Neither, probably. Who was that woman who was working with for both of them? The one the captain says did it? Psh, nobody believes that. The captain's full of shit. He's just not taking sides.
Well, he showed us her rifle.
Kayla waved a hand dismissively.
Augie took that off her ship himself.
Maybe that guy who lives down at the bottom decks?
Nah, Shine's a wimp.
Augie yawned. I'm gonna go take a leak. Where's the toilet? Fergus cranked his neck to see if there was anything in back. His vision swam a little as he moved. Shit, that stuff was strong. The whole place is a toilet. He got up and handed off the bottle to Kayla, who scowled.
Don't piss in here, she protested.
He mock bowed. Very well, your highness. Then he strode out the door and took a left in front of the windows. He turned to face them and leered, sticking his hands on the armor at his groin.
Not there either. Go around the corner. Nobody wants to see that.
Augie just cackled and continued on around the corner. Kayla frowned at Fergus, like she was thinking of something, then made a face and took a slug from the bottle.
Jesus, this is disgusting. No wonder somebody shot him.
What's he supposed to be? She sniffed at the mouth of the bottle, cautiously took another sip that she swirled in her mouth.
Tequila, I think.
What? No way! He considered taking another taste, but decided against it. He considered taking Augie's seat and decided against that, too. He wondered if Kayla was judging him for not taking it.
So how are you liking John Wayne Kogano-san's station?
She said the name in an ironic tone.
Everything you hoped it'd be?
It's all right, he said, not sure what the right answer was.
It's a toilet.
Last place was a toilet, too. At least here the pay's all right. We get to bust heads sometimes. She made a side-to-side gesture with her head, like she was considering it.
There are worse perks, I guess.
They had a brief conversation about the relative merits of busting heads and whether the stun batons were fun, Fergus's position, or took the fun out of it by knocking them out too soon, Kayla's. And whether Augie was full of shit about hitting someone so hard he busted his baton, the mutually agreed position.
Where is that shithead anyway? Kayla said. Did he lose his dick or something?
I'll go look.
Nah, she said. Technically, I'm in charge. He's probably waiting, hoping one of us will come around the corner so he can accidentally flash us.
She thumbed the control on her baton and let it crackle and flicker, and grinned maliciously.
Accidents happen.
She sauntered off, and this time Fergus did take one of the two chairs. They weren't that comfortable in armor. It was hard to get settled. He moved his butt this way and his shoulders that way, but the edge still dug between his ribs. He squirmed again, and there was a thud. He stopped, turned, and craned his head. There was a gun on the floor. He got up, squatted down, and inspected it. He didn't really know shit about guns, but it looked pretty awesome. It had some kind of dragon etched on the side of the metal thing, the barrel, and the name George Washington Chung, Happy Birthday, on the other side. It was faint, but he heard the crackle of the stun baton. He chuckled, then frowned. Shouldn't Augie be screaming in pain? Maybe she was just scaring him. He picked up the gun. It was a lot heavier than it looked. Now Kayla was taking too long. He wandered out, around the windows. It was just empty corridor ahead, and it kinda smelled like piss, but most of the corridors in the station smelled like piss.
Shit, this is dumb,
he muttered, and at that point 3 things happened. He was grabbed from behind with something sharp pressed against his neck, and the woman who grabbed him said, "Yes, it is." The third thing was that the gun in his hand went off. His eardrums shot pain into his skull, and he tried to put his hands on his ears, but she pulled him down backward. The next thing he knew, the gun had been knocked from his hand, both hands were pulled roughly behind him and tied, and he was shoved forward. He couldn't hear over the ringing in his ears, but he didn't have to. She grabbed his wrists and pulled up on them, frog marching him ahead, down the corridor, and then into an open doorway. She pushed him, and he hit the wall hard enough he saw stars through the pane as he slid to the floor. "Shit," his abductor hissed, the first thing he heard properly. The back of her right hand was covered in blood, and she cradled it in the other. Fergus rolled and saw Kayla and Augie trussed up with gray tape over their mouths. Kayla gave him a look of utter disgust, which Fergus thought was unfair. Augie's pants were around his ankles. He recognized his abductor now, too, mostly by the sword at her hip. She had a wicked-looking knife clutched underhand in her left hand, digging in the back of her right hand in a way that must have been excruciating, judging by the look on her face. It jerked, and something small flew. She flexed her right hand and winced. "Lucky shot," she growled. "Shrapnel from the ricochet." Fergus wasn't sure what was lucky about that, or whether it was lucky for him. She dug in one of her deep pockets and came up with more gray tape, which she managed to wrap tightly around her hand using her teeth. Which she managed to wrap tightly around her hand using her teeth and her left hand awkwardly, then tore it. She flexed again, and it obviously hurt, but she didn't make a noise. Blood welled and dripped from the edges of the makeshift bandage. She surveyed them for a moment, then ducked out of the room. She returned just a few seconds later with the gun in her hand. She inspected it, shoved it in her pocket, and retrieved that wicked-looking knife from its sheath. "Well, you pissed me off," she growled at the 3 of them, "and I have to assume someone heard that. If I were you, I'd talk, or I might get impatient." Holding the knife like she meant to use it, she bent over Augie and ripped the tape from his mouth. He screamed and swore, and Fergus remembered his ugly little peach fuzz mustache and wondered if he still had it. Kayla took her treatment with a little more dignity, just a sharp intake of breath. The woman stood back. "Now, where's Geronimo Rommel?" Fergus's heart dropped into his stomach the moment she started saying the name, and he struggled to shout, "We're not telling you any—" Him, Kayla and Augie said at once. Kayla illustrating who she meant with a flick of her head towards Fergus. Traitors. The woman frowned at him. You? She spoke dubiously. Fergus said. You're not Rommel.
Yes, he is, Augie said. At least he said he was.
Shut up, Roggy!
You, the woman said, and kicked Kayla's foot. When did this guy show up?
A couple days ago. File said his real name was Geronimo Rommel. The captain was all happy because he was some kind of special forces hot shit.
You, the woman said ominously, do not look like special forces hot shit. And you sure as hell aren't Jerry Rommel. Explain. Fergus Capper said. You said that already.
So, we were on a ship together.
Describe him. He said, and she racked the pistol.
Big guy, mohawk, only wore tight black clothes, slept with like half the ship.
Her deep scowl softened to a frown. Well, you've met him anyway. So why are you wearing his name?
I was mad that McMasters hadn't given me an offer even though I really wanted to be in security, and he said that his offer was insulting, but it was insane. He said he wasn't setting foot on this bullshit cheap station, and he said he'd sell me his offer for 1,000 credits. I just needed to pretend to be him, and he'd tell McMasters he was using a false name. Except it was my name, and shit, lady, I didn't know he was a friend of yours, honest.
She snorted. You've definitely met him. Did he stay on that ship?
Yeah.
You haven't seen him on this station at all?
Yeah, seriously. Shit, you think I haven't been watching? I've been scared half to death he'd pop up and I have to give all that money back.
She stared at him a long time and swore.
You have to believe me, it's true.
That's the problem. I do believe you. She folded her arms, her hand still dripping dark blood. She stared at them, and they stared back. It sounded like she muttered, "Point to Herrera." Louder, she said, "Where's Gloria Settles?"
Fuck you,
Kayla said.
Yeah, we're not telling you shit,
Augie said. Fergus felt annoyed that they were totally willing to give him up, but not one of their other buddies. But he didn't know who this Settles was, and grudgingly admitted it. Their kidnapper studied the three of them, then unsheathed her sword. It sounded like a whisper of steel on steel, and he barely heard it over his pulse pounding in his ears. She lowered it to the ground with a soft tap, and drew its tip along the deck as she walked slowly down the line, eyeing them each in turn. Fergus. Kayla. Augie. They stared at the light glinting off the blade, strained to hear the faint scratching. She stopped in front of Augie and stared down at him with a nasty glint in her eye. Her hand dripped blood onto the deck. Tap, tap, tap. I'm not above torture, and you have no pants. Talk.
She's in the infirmary.
Kayla groaned. Let me guess. She got sick right before Raj Del Rio was shot?
Maybe.
The woman folded her arms, frowned. Then, fighting down the yells and attempts to bite, she taped all their mouths again. Blood dripped onto Fergus's face from her taped hand as she did, and he noticed that she was trying to hold it stiff. Then, she left. They all made muffled noises and tried to get themselves upright, but mostly just thrashed into each other. Fergus hit his head twice and gave it up. Their shift was almost up, and someone would come looking soon. Probably. He heard a noise like someone chewing a rubber tire, and then a spitting sound. Augie heaved with exertion, but it wasn't muffled by the tape anymore. He laughed, like gloating.
So what are they paying you, Geronimo?
Augie said in a nasty tone of voice, the kind that said that Fergus hadn't heard the end of it, and wouldn't for a long time. He tried to say, "Shut up," through the tape, and he was pretty sure he was understood. Kayla laughed, muffled by the tape.
Whatever it is, it's too much.
The real sniper. The miner's hand burned. She was pretty sure she'd broken one of the metacarpals, judging by the swelling just below her middle finger and the sharp, searing pain every time she tried to flex it. Of all the places in the universe to lose the use of her middle finger. She tried to ping Doc Mills, but he didn't respond. Probably for the best, anyway, in case his comm channel was compromised. Anyway, she was running out of time. Once they found the 3 guards she'd subdued, or once they freed themselves, it would be obvious she wasn't on her ship. The lawyer's office they'd commandeered for an infirmary was close to the Galleria, though, exactly the wrong place for her to be. She ducked from empty doorway to empty doorway, shops and residences and storerooms. She listened carefully to the amplified mic in her comm set, and used her mirror and a tiny camera to watch, but her heart still pounded, and the pain in her hand was distracting. A first aid kit would have been a damn smart thing to have brought. There wasn't much time. She chanced a call to Herrera. "I need another favor. It'll piss off McMasters."
Name it.
"I want you to splash yourself with vodka, walk out to his quarters, and ring his bell. Keep me on the line and tell me who you see on the way. If he's there, give him a piece of your mind. If he's not, go back slowly and tell me who you see." He laughed evilly, and she only half listened to the noises, first of splashing, then of him walking.
Fuck you,
he said, like a greeting to someone. She moved to the nearest elevator and got ready.
Bottom of the fucking morning to you, you goddamn semi-sentient barnacle.
Herrera greeted someone else. "You're drunk," she faintly heard. That was 2. 3 down decks, 6 in the port. She tried to remember how many were on patrols elsewhere. Another half dozen? She heard a hatch opening and had to check to make sure it wasn't nearby. "You," came a familiar voice. "What the devil do you want?" She nodded. That was all she needed to know.
I want you to know that you are a shitweasel of the second order, you filthy inbred dick moss. I've had diseases more socially acceptable than you. Oh, for the love of God, this again? You're depraved. Get your foot out of my door, you old drunk.
She turned down the volume on the entertaining string of abuse and got to work. First, she tapped into the program she'd left in the dockmaster's shack and started the airlock gas purge on a slow cycle. "Keep him distracted," she murmured into the comm.
What the hell's a jobber now?
She heard McMasters say. While the gas purge was underway, she retrieved from her pocket the comm she'd borrowed from the female guard, figured out how to set the "officer down" alarm, and sent it down the elevator to the bottom deck.
You're a feckless ninny, a whiskey shit-scargling plague vector with drool in your balls and pus in your veins. That's just disgusting. Shut up. I said Will you shut up, goddamn you? I've got an emergency call. I said shut up!
She got away from the elevator and moved quickly around the long way to the Galleria. She heard boots, hard to tell how many. The infirmary had been close by the doctor's office, off a small alley. Close by, she could still hear running footsteps. Too close. She chewed the inside of her lip for a moment, then took the stairs up to the back of the upper level. Luck would only get her so far, and showing her face in the Galleria was way beyond that. She took a grenade from her pocket, armed it, and tossed it left-handed.
Get out!
She heard McMasters growl, and the distinct sound of a door shutting.
He kicked me out,
Herrera said. Good, the miner said. Get the hell out of there and behind locked doors. Thanks. The explosion drew shouts, and there was some cheering in there, too. Gunfire, but it didn't sound serious, just desultory. The way to the infirmary was clear. The door was locked. She considered her options, and knocked. Then she pounded. Open up! There's no time! What do you want? Came a woman's voice. I'm sick. No, you're not. You're holed up waiting for your ride out of here. That's me. No, it's not. Who are you? Change of plans. Angelica's getting suspicious, and the captain wants you moved fast. The door flew open, and a short woman in a black uniform stared at her.
Jesus, not so loud. What's wrong with you?
I'm not the one who insisted on talking through a door. Grab your things. That distraction won't last too long. The miner got a good look at Sergeant Gloria Settles as they stepped into the infirmary. She had a feeling that half the blood money had already gone up her nose or into her veins. Herrera had predicted as much.
Nothing else to do in this hellhole when you're flush with cash. Drugs or VR, mostly, usually both.
She considered extracting a confession or continuing the rescuing hero charade, but she was already tired, cranky, and in considerable pain. Settles didn't even look all that surprised when the miner had her sword out and up at the woman's throat.
Shit,
Settles said. Yup, said the miner, and held up the duct tape. Rejected advance.
And you brought her here? Are you out of your ever-loving mind? She's a cop. You have to let her go.
Takata's voice rose to a squeak. He stared at the hog-tied, black-uniformed sniper, who in turn was scanning the darkened restaurant kitchen with terrified eyes. Well, look, said the miner. If I go to Feeney, I won't get a word in edgewise. And if I go to Angelica, they'll just kill her outright, leaving me without a bargaining chip. The sniper whimpered.
So you brought her here?
What can I say? I lack imagination. Have you heard from Herrera?
He's at home, in bed, sleeping, which is what I should be doing instead of serving drinks to kidnappers and murderers and lunatics.
You haven't served us any drinks.
Well, I got it half right anyway. You're out of your mind. Are you the one who blew something up in the Galleria?
The miner considered her options. Maybe.
Maybe, she says.
A lot goes on. You might be referring to a different explosion.
You're out of your mind.
You keep saying that.
You should listen,
the miner heard in stereo. She and Takata both turned to see Mary Feeney standing in the back door, arms folded. She had dark circles under her puffy red eyes, her tattooed skin was blotchy, and her lips were set so tightly they were white. She looked like hell. "Hello, Mary," said the miner.
"Hello, Jane. I hear one of you killed my husband."
The miner pointed at the sniper, who probably would have pointed back if she hadn't been tied up.
"So you say. McMasters says different."
"McMasters has 6 people standing guard outside my ship where they have me cornered." Mary blinked and coughed what might have been a laugh.
"Christ, what an asshole."
"Seriously?"
"But just being an asshole doesn't make him wrong. He showed us your rifle. He showed us your medal for sharpshooting. He told us that you admitted to trying to destabilize this station."
"That's all true," the miner said, "but I didn't kill Raj. Won't say it didn't cross my mind, or even that I didn't think he had it coming. But I didn't kill him." Mary frowned. The sniper made muffled noises through the gag.
"Takata, was she really here?"
Oh, the other shoe drops. This is why you invaded my restaurant in the middle of the night, so I can alibi you? Forget it. You want an alibi, you go wake up Herrera. He was here.
He seemed to realize what he'd just said.
Shit. Go to hell, both of you.
The miner shrugged. "Can't have it plainer than that."
"I'm pretty sure you can."
The miner didn't reply, just rubbed her injured hand. Even with the painkillers she'd grabbed from the infirmary, it still throbbed. She had a change of bandages, real ones, but hadn't had time to put them on. Mary stared at her a long time, then swore.
"Give it to me. We'll want to question her."
"She's no good to me dead," the miner said, shifting her weight so that more of her body stood between Mary and the sniper. "Not while Angelica still wants to kill me."
"That's your problem, not mine."
They stared at each other until Mary sighed.
"We won't kill her. That'd be too convenient for you if you're lying."
She unholstered her pistol. "Come on, you. On your feet." The sniper thrashed when they tried to pick her up, slamming her bound feet so hard against Takata's cabinets that the doors dented and plastic plates tumbled and clattered on the deck. Even at gunpoint, she refused to stand on her own, so that finally Mary called for a couple of goons. The miner watched without helping as 4 of them managed to wrangle the struggling cop by just picking her up by the twisted tape. Mary studied the squirming form and frowned. "Bring it to the old man," she said. "Tell him I want her kept alive and able to talk." She got 4 uncertain nods in reply, but she didn't wait to see them. Ignoring Takata's protests, she walked quickly and purposefully out of the kitchen, navigated the bar floor in the dark, then punched the button to raise the shutters. The miner stayed back in the shadows. "Where are you going?" called one of the goons. The miner recognized her, but not well. "To talk to my sister-in-law." "Whoa, whoa, whoa! Wait, what?" The goon looked alarmed and left her 3 cohorts to deal with the struggling captive. She shoved past the miner. "Where's the sick Mary?" She held up a hand. "I know, but he was her brother. She deserves to be in on this." "Man, I don't know." Mary's shoulders sagged. "I don't know either, but it's high time we ended this shit. That means trusting each other, and that means someone goes first. Go on, I want to see you leave." The miner watched from the kitchen doorway as they exchanged dubious looks and hauled their captive out the back. "This is probably dumb," the miner said. "Are they gone?" "Yeah." Mary set off across the Galleria, head held high. The miner watched her go.
See, this is going to backfire too.
Takata had a bowl of oatmeal or something and was eating. It smelled amazing. He didn't offer her any.
You think you're going to rile them up again, but they like their little equilibrium.
"I thought you hated the status quo."
I do, but I hate the open fighting more.
He sighed and set down his spoon.
Look, yeah, I'd rather be that asshole McMaster. I'd rather that asshole McMasters did his job and ran them all out of here. But you're not going to push him to do that. You're just going to get him killed.
He's got it coming.
Why? Because he fucked up your ship?
Because he stood by taking bribes while this station went to hell. Because he had someone assassinated in the middle of the goddamn Galleria so he could keep taking those bribes. Because he was going to fucking pin it on me. Takata gave her a level gaze until she threw up her hands. And yeah, all right, because he fucked up my ship. My homicidal urges. My homicidal urges, my rules.
You've killed a lot of people yourself, you know.
Never said I didn't have it coming too. An ornately tattooed kid with horns burst from Angelica's casino and dashed across the Galleria. The miner ran out to meet her, and when she didn't stop, pulled her sword left-handed. She reared back. "Get out of my way! I have to deliver a message!" The miner stared at her, wondering who Angelica considered more expendable than electrons. "I'll come too." The messenger stared at the sword and didn't argue, which was just as well, as they'd gotten attention from the security station. 2 armored guards came out, sidearms drawn. The miner followed the messenger at a jog up the stairs to Feeney's hotel, where a crowd had already seen the runner and emerged en masse. The messenger doubled over, wheezing after the run up the stairs, and gasped out that Angelica had Feeney's granddaughter and would like to trade for the sniper. It didn't take long for the message to filter up to the old man, who came out roaring that he'd kill that backstabber. He fumed and raged, and he made one of his soldiers restrain the messenger. He growled instructions to different people who jumped and ran. Mr. Shine strolled out of the hotel, still in his tuxedo, but with his arm in a sling. He looked like he'd just been woken up. He walked up to Feeney and tried to say a few words in his ear, but Feeney had none of it. He paced and ranted and hurled invective at Angelica and her idiot brother, who, in his telling, had probably, if with difficulty, committed suicide. Someone came out and passed him a little red megaphone that had ridges like it had been printed in a hurry. Angelica, get out here, you damn snake, and bring me my granddaughter. The casino window's neon dice rolled in silence, coming up double sixes for the umpteenth time. The miner was starting to think they were loaded. God damn you, get out here!
In my own time, old man.
Angelica's voice came over some kind of loudspeaker, and was hard to hear over the crowd.
Cool your jets.
Horse trading. The tables and chairs of the Galleria sat under the sun lamps strong enough to... What? Oh, I see. The tables and chairs of the Galleria sat under the sun lamps strong enough that the miner wondered... There should be no the there. That's what it is. That's what's throwing me. Horse trading. The tables and chairs of the Galleria sat under sun lamps strong enough that the miner wondered if Angelica was waiting for high noon. A number of tables were knocked over or broken, and smashed chair parts decorated the aisles. Bloodstains marked furniture and deck alike, and even the trees had been splashed. Takata had lowered his shutters. Herrera was still asleep anyway. He'd missed the fun. Feeney had seen the miner and insisted that she stick around. She maybe could have objected, maybe forcefully, but she was tired and her hand hurt, and she liked the view from up above. The rest of them had retreated inside the hotel, leaving her the sole human occupant of the Galleria, now that McMaster's crew had withdrawn, rebuffed angrily by Feeney and Angelica both. The empty space stank of blood and ozone, and the only sound was the whir of the anti-projectile lasers. Mr. Shine emerged from one of the side spurs off the Galleria, alone. The miner hadn't seen him leave. Maybe he'd gone out through the service entrance. Smart move. It made him appear more independent. He projected confidence as he walked, slowly and deliberately. His sling was gone, but that arm seemed pretty firmly lodged with his thumb hooked in his red cummerbund. He strolled to the middle of the Galleria, to the stage under the sad-looking palm trees. As power plays went, the miner had to respect it. With McMasters under suspicion, he was setting himself up as the grown-up here, making sure everyone played nice. She felt like she was watching a coronation. The casino doors rolled open, and 3 columns of somber-looking fighters came out, armored with miscellaneous bits and mismatched helmets, carrying clubs and swords. The miner recognized some of them as having been Feeney's crew. Fickle bunch, she thought. Behind the fighters, looking defeated as she stared at her feet over tied hands, shuffled Mary Feeney. Angelica walked behind her, holding something to her back that was covered in a jacket. The miner considered that a nice touch, paying a kind of homage to the firearms rule. The entourage jerked to a halt at the foot of the steps up to the stage. Their grimy faces looked for the first time like real soldiers. Behind them, the dice rolled too many sixes. Mr. Shine nodded once to Angelica, then took his uninjured hand out of his pocket and gestured casually up at the hotel. Come on. Feeney fussed as he tried to assemble an honor guard of his own around the terrified, bound sniper, who was still thrashing but kept on her feet. Eventually, he managed a box formation, and the miner heard him tell them to keep her on her feet until Mary was safe. The phalanx managed the stairs with a small amount of dignity, and slowly navigated the furniture-crowded aisle toward the center of the Galleria. Mr. Shine held up his hand, and they came with ill grace to a halt. All right. Oh, sorry, All right, he said, and his calm, deep voice was loud enough that he had to have had... All right, he said, and his calm, deep voice was loud enough that he had to have arranged a mic. Again, the miner was impressed with his sense of theater. She wasn't thrilled to replace Angelica and Feeney with this puffed-up king-in-waiting, but she felt the world owed Takata a bit of real peace. If there was more to that sentence than all right, the miner never heard it. Black uniformed security officers poured out of the shuttered stores on both sides and surrounded the two groups. McMasters and 10 more armored guards emerged from the security station. She couldn't quite tell, but she was reasonably sure that McMasters had waxed his mustache for the occasion. He must have woken up the entire complement of station security for this. They were all armed with stun batons, but a few of them had sidearms, and McMasters himself carried a rifle. The miner's rifle, in fact.
"Surrender these two to me," McMasters said loudly. "I'm the law here, and I'll handle the criminals."
Settles seemed to visibly relax, and stopped struggling. All eyes shifted to Mr. Shine, and he was frozen. The confident smile had turned into a rictus grin. He still had his left thumb hooked in his cummerbund, and the right hand was outstretched in a gesture of unclear intent. The king-in-waiting was apparently on standby. The various goons on all sides shuffled nervously, unsure what was going on or what would happen next. Angelica looking back and forth between Shine and McMasters. The various goons on all sides shuffled nervously, unsure what was going on or what would happen next. Angelica looking back and forth between Shine and McMasters. Feeney had come up beside the miner and was clutching the railing, white-knuckled.
"What is that fool doing?" he whispered to himself. "Don't let McMasters have them, Shine, you jackass. Say something."
"The hell you will," Angelica snarled, when Shine said nothing. You're just protecting your attack dog." The smirk on McMaster's face was visible a mile away.
"If you really thought that, Ms. Del Rio, you wouldn't have taken the Feeney girl hostage. You still think Mr. Feeney had your brother killed, hired that psychotic killer up there to do it, or we wouldn't be out here. You're probably right."
He raised the rifle a tad and chambered around. His deputies hovered around him in a loose knot, probably terrified under their black helmets. Mr. Shine stood paralyzed. He started to say something, and stopped and stammered, and the microphone echoed his stammering. McMasters and Angelica eyeballed each other, ignoring him. Feeney's goons guarding the sniper looked increasingly worried as security advanced on them. The miner never had much patience for standoffs, nor for indecision. She still had a pretty decent throwing arm despite all the years in low gravity, but of course the security people were well armored against rocks and bottles, and had been pelted half-heartedly by both Feeney's and Angelica's crews in the past. They were used to it. So it took about a second for one of them to glance down at the object she'd thrown, and then another half-second to complete a double take and yell, "Grenade!" The security team had time to scatter, and some of them even did. McMasters threw himself to the floor, where someone with more viciousness than sense gave him a swift kick before the explosion blew the scene into bedlam. The armored security goons engaged with the fighters from both sides indiscriminately, as more poured down the stairs from Feeney's hotel and out from the casino.
"Get Mary! Damn your bastards, get Mary!"
Feeney howled, forgetting his megaphone and hanging halfway over the railing. He turned and saw the miner and grabbed her jumpsuit in 2 handfuls.
"Mick, I'll give you 10,000 credits if you rescue her. I swear to God Almighty I will."
There wasn't a need, though. Mary had shaken loose of Angelica and was barreling through the crowd. Up past Mr. Shine onto the dais, then down into Feeney's crew. Bleeding and limping, she used her tied forearms as a shield as she caromed off tables and through a swarm of assholes eager for a fight. Everyone froze at the crack of a rifle. Mary stumbled and fell over a table, then down to the deck. The miner didn't think before she vaulted the railing and landed hard with her implant-assisted joints screaming. Her left leg exploded in pain, but she could still move it, and she dashed for Mary. On the other side of the Galleria, where she'd been thrashing and kicking at Angelica's goons dragging her away, the sniper's body spasmed, went slack, and fell. Angelica screamed frustration and fury, but her guards dragged her bodily away into the safety of the casino. The screams and thuds and crackles of stun batons were joined by gunshots and flashes from the anti-projectile lasers. Mr. Shine stumbled and went to his knees. McMasters fumbled with the rifle again, turning toward where Mary had dived under a table, but instead used it as a bat to fend off a huge, bare-chested fighter with stun knuckles on both fists. Somewhere, the miner could have sworn she heard a chainsaw rev. McMasters fell back and hoarsely called the retreat, squeezing off one more shot into the crowd as he and his team fled the field. Confused, pissed off, and probably drunk, the crowd turned into an enthusiastically bloody mosh pit. The miner reached Mary, her knee screaming. She pulled the still-bound woman from under the table and hauled her to her feet. Mary leaned on her hard enough that her spikes gouged the miner's cheek and neck, and drew blood, but they were both so charged with adrenaline that they sprinted through the crowd anyway. Judging the stairs too hard to get to, the miner steered them to a bench outside a shuttered VR joint, sheltered by the stairway and just beneath the anti-projectile lasers.
I'm fucking done with this shit.
Mary heaved a sigh that could have been a sob or a laugh, then spat something out that looked like a tooth.
I am so done. So fucking done. And where...
She closed her eyes for a moment, and her head bobbed a little.
Where the fuck did you get a grenade? Are you out of your mind?
Then she ruined the miner's comeback by passing out. I haven't had an AI one in a while. Goodbye. Banished to New South Wales. Or not banished, as the case may be. Anyway. Utility functions. Screwball Corbell crouched behind the inner bulkhead, 4 of Feeney's people lined up along it behind him. It was hard to hear. The giant air movers below them rumbled and roared as they breathed for the station. 8 decks above, if there was a quiet spot in the Galleria, you could hear them if you listened carefully. Down here, right on top of them, you couldn't hear anything else. The nice thing was that he couldn't hear the complaining. The bad thing was that it left him with nothing to do but think. They were supposed to hang out in case Angelica made a move. She'd taken Mary hostage and could be planning anything. They had Shine's blessing to be there, as long as they didn't actually go in. 5 at the Air Handler Control Center, 5 at the Water Reclamation Center. God, they were stretched thin. Shine had been stuck in the hotel, drinking with the old man, and Corbell was pretty sure the big guy was thoroughly under the old man's thumb. Ditz had said Feeney was magnetic, but it was kind of amazing to watch in real time. Say, do you remember that Kalishkan kid? Turned into belly laughs and, let me fill your drink there, and a sly, this has all gotten out of hand, don't you think? With Raj's body not even cold, and Corbell's good socks stuck to his ankles with dried blood. He was sort of amazed the casino man fell for it. Living down in the bottom of the station for 6 months, though, probably he wanted to. He was starting to feel foolish when one of the others jerked her head up suddenly, looking concerned and alert. She had been one of Angelica's, he thought, her and that guy in the stupid fake leather sling. Carter, the one who lost his head and started shooting when they were running from that bomb. The one who shot Ditz. Corbell opened his mouth to bellow a question, and then he heard it too. A shout from inside, and then a gunshot. The wide stares on the other faces meant they'd heard it too. Shit, he said to himself, and then louder, come on! The old man had given him a nice pistol, and Corbell had it ready when he entered the control room. 5 armed jerks stood on the other side with a couple of Shine's people cringing at their feet, and fortunately Corbel surprised them, because he had time to duck behind some big control cabinet thing before they had their own guns up and shot the poor jerk who came through the door behind him. He cringed at the echo of the gunshots in the enclosed space, but made himself peer around the other side of the big metal box and squeeze off 2 shots. He crouched back down behind cover without checking or caring if he hit.
Don't hit Shine's people!
He yelled, as much to reassure Shine's people as to direct his own. He really hoped those were Angelica's people attacking. He had no idea whose side anyone was on anymore unless they were physically on the other side of a room. Oh, shit. He really hoped those were Angelica's people attacking. He had no idea whose side anyone was on anymore, unless they were physically on the other side of a room. His ears rang with the gunshots. There was no sense in shouting instructions. He saw 2 of his people just outside the hatch, one wounded and the other tending to her. It wasn't Carter shot, worse luck. That sadistic SOB was crouched down behind some kind of console on the other side, and a totally bald woman he didn't recognize came and crouched down right behind Corbel himself. Carter stood and shot and ducked again, grinning. The bald woman glanced at Corbel and looked relieved when he shook his head. Instead, he made eye contact with the woman outside the room tending to the wounded. He mouthed, "How many?" twice before she ducked her head real fast into the room and held up 3 fingers. He nodded. Carter stood again, but dove at the ground before he could fire. 3 shots came from the other side. Corbel tried not to hyperventilate. His stomach felt sour and his ears hurt, and when he braced himself against the console, his shoe came off and he had to scrabble to keep from falling. He frowned, looked at the bald woman, and mouthed, "On 3." Then he turned on one knee, shouted, "Fire in the hole!" as loud as he could, and stood and hurled his shoe. Angelica's goons dove. Corbel and the bald woman stood and fired, and Carter figured it out and joined in. Then Shine's people grabbed chairs and started beating on the downed fighters, kicking their guns away. The rest took maybe a minute. One of Shine's people was hurt bad. They were older, nerdy types, and looked scared shitless even after beating 3 of Angelica's goons to death. Probably more scared. The one of Feeney's who'd been shot was only grazed, he thought, but there was a lot of blood. They shut the doors, and the noise got a lot quieter. Feeney's people cheered. Nobody really knew first aid, but they got strips of cloth tied off, and the bleeding seemed to stop. There was an inner office, even quieter. Corbel went into it to see if he could figure out what the hell was going on in the rest of the station, and the ringing in his ears subsided almost enough to hear. His fingers trembled with the adrenaline spillover. He felt like he was about to either fall to pieces or run a damn marathon.
"Aye, aye,"
Carter crowed, grinning and slapping his uninjured hand on Corbel's shoulder. Was that the hand that shot Ditz?
"Little screwball want us a battle."
Corbel whirled on Carter and slammed him against the wall, wedging his pistol up under the man's jaw.
"My name is Corbel, asshole. Stephen Corbel. Say it." Stephen Corbel,"
Corbel stated. Corbel started, and Carter recited it with him, eyes wide.
"If you can't remember it, call me sir. You are not my buddy. You have not earned the right to call me that. Do you understand me? All you assholes, do you understand me?"
Yes, Carter said, and then the others repeated it. Corbel let him go, and he fell.
"Now get the fuck out of here,"
he ordered, and once they all left the
"Now get the fuck out of here,"
he ordered, and once they all had left the little office, he shut the door and puked in the corner. Time to blow this scene.
I hope you don't mind my asking, but, what's wrong with this place?
The short, round man eating a plate of Takata's pasta had plainly been pondering this question for some time, looking for a delicate way to ask. After all, in order to get to Amanogawa from the port, which is where he had come from, he had had to walk through the Galleria. The Galleria, though corpse-free for 2 whole hours, was still a mess. Rug-sized smears of blood marked its floor where the cleaning robots had done their valiant, beeping best. Only 3 chairs remained intact, and none of the tables. Someone had left an axe stuck in one of the bedraggled palm trees. A chainsaw had dragged itself in laps around the floor, chewing up tile in long, swooping lines, spattering blood in tiny droplets until its battery finally ran down. 4 yellow plastic cones warned would-be pedestrians away from where the deck had been blasted and deformed by an explosion. The miner suspected that they were someone's idea of a joke. The warring factions had returned to their casino, hotel, and security station, respectively. There had been a tacit agreement not to attack each other while retrieving bodies, and with only the single sticking point of who would claim Mr. Shine's body. The Morlocks won that one, arriving in the Galleria in a tightly packed, well-armed mass of silent, grim faces, and then melting away again after. The removal process had actually finished before the newcomer had wandered gawking through the carnage to the only restaurant in 7 million kilometers. He'd sat down and asked for a menu, whereupon Takata had said,
"I'll make spaghetti. Ever had spaghetti? You'll like it."
And then Takata had walked away. He was, in fact, enjoying the pasta in red sauce. He had a napkin tucked into the top of his jumpsuit, which the miner had never seen anyone in real life do, and was relishing the food and the red wine, which Takata had served in a real glass. The miner had not been offered spaghetti. She decided, against the vote of her growling stomach, not to provoke another bitter rant by asking for some. It had taken the statistically unlikely intrusion of an actual paying customer to stop the previous rants, but she wasn't sure just how far under his placid and genial facade those rants still were, and her headache was finally starting to go away. First, Takata had torn her head off for throwing a grenade in the Galleria, like nobody had ever done that before. Let's try that again. First, Takata had torn her head off for throwing a grenade in the Galleria, like nobody had ever done that before. And for killing a bunch of security guards, and for killing a bunch of Angelica's people, and for killing a bunch of Feeney's people, and for getting Mr. Shine killed, and just generally for causing mayhem. Then Herrera had come in and bitten her head off himself, first for not giving him warning so that he could video the fight, and then for being out of grenades. Then Takata had been mad that she had somehow put this idea into Herrera's head, and she had been starting to think that she could just never win with these two, when this roly-poly peacemaker had wandered in, looking dazed and hungry and easily separated from his credits.
"Everything's wrong with this place,"
Herrera was saying when the miner tuned back into the conversation.
"Starting with the people who run it. Anaconda."
"Hey!" The newcomer drew himself up in his seat and tried to look dignified. "I've been with Anaconda for 15 years now." The miner turned in her seat, suddenly interested. "What is it that you do?" "Oh, I'm just a trucker. I don't really care. I just felt like I ought to hoist the company flag, you know. I haul ore, mostly. I'm making a circuit of the Anaconda Holdings I'm making a circuit of the Anaconda Holdings, picking up their buyings. I have to say, this station's been slacking off." He waggled a finger playfully. "Smallest haul of any place I've been to this year. I mean, not bad. I don't want to insult anyone. Some good quality nickel iron, you know." She smiled tightly. "You don't say. When are you moving on?" "Oh, pretty soon. The robots are loading up the hold, but it won't take long. I was going to stay over in that hotel up there and maybe have myself a real shower, but it looks a little, busy." The miner nodded, couldn't think of a reply, and kept her mouth shut. The trucker happily swirled another forkful of spaghetti, ate it, and said with his mouth half full, "I was supposed to pick up a passenger, too, but the guy who contacted me went quiet." "Let me guess. Guy name of McMasters wanted you to pick up a female passenger?" He gave her an owl-eyed look. Yeah. How'd you know about it?" "Lucky guess," she said. "I don't suppose he paid in advance?" He shook his head, chewing. "He paid a deposit. Said she'd pay the balance once we were underway. I'm Khalid, by the way. Nice to meet you." "Call me Mickey," the miner said, after Takata and Herrera introduced themselves and glared at her for being rude. "Huh, like the mouse? Huh!" "Yeah, like the mouse." If he minded the conversation being over, he didn't show it. He returned to his pasta with gusto and drank the wine like it was water, which, thought the miner, it could have been.
What the hell?
Came Takata's voice from the kitchen. The miner stood and drew her pistol, the automatic she'd taken off the guard, ignoring the trucker's eyes bugging out at her. Mary came through the curtain, pushing it aside like it was heavy, and apologizing quietly. "Hey," she said, ignoring Takata. "Got a minute? In private?" Her voice was subdued, and she looked haggard. "Back here, not out there." Takata threw up his hands at the invasion.
Other people get rats in their kitchens. I got gangsters.
Neither Mary nor the miner paid him any attention as they walked to the back of the prep area and took stools. "I'm not asking for help. I'm not good at asking for help," Mary said, staring down at her hands, "so I'm not gonna. But I have to get out of here, Mick, and I have to be even with McMasters before I do." The miner nodded. "One condition. I have to know what happened to your brother." "I'm sorry. I don't know for sure. When the fighting got bad, Granddad tricked him into getting onto the yacht. It went away and hasn't docked since. He's not on the station, that's all I know. The thing in his chest has a tracking tag in it, and McMasters has a way of detecting if it gets close to the station. I think sensors look for the radiation signature." The miner absorbed that and relaxed. "All right. I don't have any money of my own." "That complicates things." Mary winced. "Yeah. Look, my grandfather keeps a tight fist on the cash. I don't want him knowing I'm leaving until I'm gone." "That definitely complicates things." She looked up at the miner, defiant. "You afraid of complicated?" "No, I'm afraid of picking up the tab." Report. I cannot flip a page. What is going on? There it goes. Feeney looked up with hooded eyes as Corbel quietly entered the room. The old man looked ancient, frazzled. He clutched a glass of whiskey in one hand, half full, and in the other held a photograph. Corbel didn't need to look at it to know the one. It was a still shot of Feeney, Mary, Wilfred, Angelica, Raj, Mr. Shine. The station master, a guy named Herrera. The company rep, a woman named Tu. Two other people, whose muttered names had been followed by dead. All dapper, all grinning. Some kind of charity thing, someone had said. He recognized that restaurant Mick hung out in the background, and the bartender smiling in the back. Feeney stood in the middle of the group, both hands resting on that silver-headed walking stick of his, looking satisfied with his position on top of the world.
Angelica took the water reclamation, Corbel said without being invited to report. We held the air cyclers. We convinced Shine's people in hydroponics and vats to see our way.
Feeney scowled and put the still face down. Feeney scowled and put the still face down on the desk.
2 out of 3 ain't bad,
Corbel said.
2 out of 3 is shite,
Feeney threw the glass at his head. 2 out of 3 is the me expending twice as many resources I don't have on guard duty than she is, while she can still cut off our feckin' water. And what bloody use are the air cyclers, I'd like to know? We can't cut her off. She just needs to open her damn doors. We could fart at them, maybe. Is that your idea? It already stinks over there. It must if it's anything like this rat hole. Corbel bit back a suggestion that they could put something a lot nastier than flatulence in the casino's vents. There was such a thing as too far, and this was a man who'd gladly put a nuclear weapon in his hands. I got word from Sparks that your yacht docked, he said instead. Feeney stared at him, and he couldn't read the old man's expression. The alarms didn't go off? He's not back? I don't know. She just said to say it docked. It tried the mechanic bay that got blown up first, I guess, and went around to the other one where she is. Feeney looked genuinely glad about that. Well, I'll be. How is the old girl? Still bitter about her toys getting broken? She didn't say. She did, actually. She'd reminded him that Feeney had promised her a great deal of money to make up for a long list of things she'd been able to readily tick off from the top of her head. No sense reminding him again. He'd just fly off the handle, and Corbel didn't owe her putting up with another rant. Well. That's fine. How's Mary, by the way? I haven't seen her. She hasn't been helping? Her husband just died. Feeney tisked. Stroke of luck. The Del Rios, they're rotten, my boy. Can you imagine Angelica Del Rio as a sister-in-law? Can you? He hooted, warming to his subject. Ah, that woman's more venomous than a dozen vipers, and meaner besides. She said she'd turn over the reins, but don't you believe it. That brother of hers was weak-willed. A flash young fellow, sure, and not a bad sort, really, but not very strong up here. She'd have been trying to run things behind the scenes. Corbel kept a straight face and said nothing. Feeney didn't seem to notice. He accepted Corbel's presence, maybe was grateful for it. Anything was possible. What about that snake, McMasters? Has he shown his face yet? No. Word is, he's not very popular right now. Feeney snorted. When has he ever been? I mean, Corbel said carefully, as the informant had multiple times drawn lines of comparison to the old man, that he's not popular with his own crew. He's been telling them that shooting the sniper was an accident, that he was aiming for Angelica, but they don't all believe it. Nor, Feeney said, should they. Corbel stood silent while the old man brooded. He'd stopped overthinking his position there, really tried to avoid thinking at all. All the old worries, was he doing the wrong thing, saying the wrong thing, overstaying his welcome, listening to conversations he shouldn't, that all seemed silly. You've been a good boy, Corbel, Feeney said idly, looking at that photo again instead of at him. I see that, and by God I appreciate it. You'll see. I don't forget my friends. Corbel only nodded. Anything was possible. Getting even. The 3 security goons openly gaped at the miner when she walked in the front door of their station. They hadn't seen her through the windows because those were now mostly covered with steel blast shutters. They hadn't seen her through the cameras because someone had run by and spray-painted them again. So, a surprise was unsurprising, but this particular one was unexpected. She kept her useless right hand on her sword, which hung from that hip instead of the usual side, but didn't make a move to draw it. She looked patiently from face to face, not saying a word, until one of them marked himself as having above-average intelligence by saying, The miner turned to Mr. She hadn't recognized him with his pants on. Relax, I'm not here to torture anyone. I want to talk to McMasters. The guards hesitated, tense and waiting. Then all three got up at once and made for the back room. First, they nearly collided with each other. Then they nearly collided with McMasters himself. You, he said. Me, she admitted. What do you want? 50,000 credits and my rifle should do it. I might think up other demands later. Depends how nice you are to me.
50? Are you out of your mind?
People keep asking me that.
Why do you think I'd give you 50,000 credits?
And my rifle. The 50,000 because you're a lousy shot. The rifle because it's mine and you might hurt yourself with it.
What do you mean, lousy?
He stopped abruptly and stared. Fear crept into his features. He turned to one of his goons.
Stand guard out here. We'll talk in my office.
The miner smiled. Figured it out, did you? I like it out here, and I don't care if they hear me.
I said we'll talk in my office.
And I said I like it out here. I like my odds better. The black-suited goons looked between her and McMasters with ugly expressions. McMasters didn't press it, and the miner went on. I know where Angelica's keeping her, and I know she hasn't talked yet. Clock's ticking, though. McMasters snorted.
And you expect me to know what that means?
She shook her head, more at his lousy acting than in response. Honestly, I expect you to fuck it up while Angelica Del Rio learns that you paid Sergeant Gloria Settles to murder her brother, and then shot Settles to try to keep her quiet. After you fuck it up, I expect it's a toss-up whether you make it off the station alive. I'd flip a coin, but you might take it. The small station had started to fill up with black uniforms. They stared at McMasters.
Let me guess, you'll lead us to her?
Hell no. I want my money and my property. You can fight your own fights. After all, you picked them.
Captain, what if she's telling the truth?
Someone muttered.
We have to rescue her.
McMasters shook his head.
It's an obvious trap.
Why? The miner asked. Because you shot to kill? I've been wondering what you've been telling your people here about that.
That was an accident. I would never intentionally harm any of my people, and I feel horrible about it.
Well, for the low, low price of 50,000 credits, you can rescue your sergeant and prove it to them.
Captain, I'm not paying up front. We can't trust a word she says.
All right, she said. Fair's fair. I'll take the rifle up front and payment when you find her. She pointed at him. Dead or alive, though, you've already used a lot of time.
I'm not arming you.
I'm already armed, she said in a quiet voice. Her hand hadn't left her sword, but suddenly they all seemed to notice it at the same time. And I never asked for ammunition. If I wanted to kill you all, I'd have done it. McMasters might have had a retort, but one of his crew had quietly returned from the back room carrying the miner's rifle in 2 hands. He shoved it into McMasters' chest without saying a word and held it there, jaw set, until his boss took it. Trembling, the security chief removed the magazine, popped the round out of the chamber, and inspected it like it might have a bayonet or spare round or nuclear weapon hidden somewhere. At last, with obvious reluctance, he put it down on the side table.
Talk,
he said, though it took him 2 tries to cough it out. All eyes were on her, 11 pairs plus McMasters. She wondered briefly just how much their numbers had dwindled, and who was just injured or off duty. The miner described the chamber Mary had shown her 2 levels below, down a cargo elevator near the water reclamation, but out the back entrance and away to a storage room that was marked Radiation Hazard on a handwritten sign with Radiation spelled wrong.
They're a guard?
They're a guard? She couldn't tell who asked that. 2 outside, she said. Didn't get a good look inside. I wasn't exactly welcome. But there's probably not a lot of people in the know. Del Rio's keeping her guest well away from the casino, so the rank and file don't know she's alive. I guess she's afraid someone might tattle. McMasters let that slide. Someone had brought up the security camera feeds down there, but found them spray-painted over. They argued quietly, and she didn't try to follow it. They were discussing who should go and who should stay. And McMasters was strenuously denying that he should personally leave the safe confines of his hidey hole, though he didn't quite phrase it like that. 6 of the 11 guards suited up in full battle gear for the rescue. Heavy-duty stuff, the kind she'd have been glad of on a couple of missions. She frowned at it, not terribly happy to see that kind of armor, but there was nothing she could do about it. They went out the back door, and she watched the empty hatch for a while, idly wondering if they were taking the path that she'd suggested or one of their own. "Well," she said, "you know where to send the money." She started to take her rifle, and McMaster's hand came down on it. "Stay a while," he said, and didn't sound friendly. The remaining security personnel sat uneasily, splitting their attention between her and various video feeds around the station. Some of them paced, some kept sitting down and then standing abruptly. The feeds looked like stills. Minutes passed, and no one spoke. "You've got something else of mine," the miner said conversationally. Wooden-faced, McMasters wordlessly put 2 fingers into his breast pocket. He glanced at the little bronze coin on its stubby green silk ribbon and set it on the table between them with a click that seemed to echo in the room. The miner nodded and picked it up. "You've got a lot of them," McMasters said. Not a sneer, no emotion at all, but somehow the words stung her. A guard barreled through the door and fell to the deck on hands and knees, panting and heaving. The others jumped to their feet, and when the miner casually reached for her rifle, McMasters snatched it away. "Ambush!" wheezed the guard. "Pinned down!" She collapsed face down. "Well, shit," the miner said. "You four, move!" McMasters barked. "Get them out of there!" They jumped to grab helmets and shields and were gone. He had his sidearm trained on the miner's face, keeping well out of sword reach. I guess you think you're clever, don't you? You thought we'd fall for that." "You kind of did," she pointed out. The last remaining guard was in the middle of helping up the fallen one when he yelped. The fallen guard dashed for McMasters, and at the same time the miner dropped. The shot he squeezed off hit the barricade behind her, and she heard it ricochet. The fake guard knocked the gun from his hand with her left forearm, then decked him with her armored right fist. The miner did her part by drawing her sword and dangling the tip in front of the last guard's face. "Let's us 2 sit this one out," she suggested. Mary had flung her helmet off and was genuinely panting with the exertion of beating McMasters. She kept it up for a while, and the security chief took it.
"Stop toying and just kill me,"
he managed when she stopped.
"I'm not going to kill you," she said. "I'm done with killing. You're going to walk out that front door right now. You're going to take the berth you paid for on the ore hauler's ship, and you are never, ever going to come back."
"Oh, wait, shit. I'm not going to kill you," she said. "I'm done with killing. You're going to walk out that front door right now. You're going to take the berth you paid for on the ore hauler's ship, and you are never, ever going to come back." He sneered up at her, a stream of bloody saliva dripping from the corner of his mouth.
"So I can live if I run?"
"You can live if you run." She took a step off to the side of the office and watched him. He got unsteadily to his feet, spat a gob of blood on the deck. He looked at the front door, then jagged and dashed for the armory in the back room. Mary and the miner made no move to follow. The lone guard sank into a chair. They heard a shriek from the back room, and then they heard Angelica Del Rio say, "Hello, Tom." If anything more passed between them, the two women outside couldn't hear it. There was only a long silence, and then Angelica spoke. "He was my only brother, you son of a bitch!" The single gunshot echoed in the small space. Angelica came out of the back room, her small caliber pistol still in her hand. She eyed Mary and the miner. "We clear?" Mary said. "You were supposed to keep him from fleeing, not invite him to." "I changed my mind. He's dead anyway. Are we clear? Are we clear?" "We are far from clear. Him and me, we're clear now. You and me, Feeney and me, the light from clear will take 1,000 years to reach us." "We can settle that now if you'd like," said the miner. "No," said Mary. "I'm sick of blood." Angelica snorted. "It's too late for that. This story's been told 100 times, and it only ever ends in blood." "I don't believe that. What'll it take to be even, Angelica?" "Surrender and take what's coming to you. Both of you. All of you. I put up with too much shit from the Feeney family, starting with your idiot brother putting a fucking nuclear weapon in his chest and ending with you putting a target on my brother's back. I don't care who pulled the trigger. You got him killed, and we're sure as hell not even for that. This is my station now. If you want peace, leave." She walked past them both, head held high, right out the front door. Mary sat heavily in the desk sergeant's chair and put her head in her hands. And that is where we'll call it for today, and we will finish this tomorrow. Things have gotten pretty intense, but the roller coaster ride is not yet over, I promise. Anyway, after I do that, after I finish it, I'll get the playlists updated. That is what I shall do. Any love notes from YouTube? Let's see. Any love notes at all? Looks like no. This is good. Well, I thought it was a no, but it's taking its sweet time to load. Yeah, nothing. Nothing. Nada. Okie dokie. With that said, we'll resume this tomorrow, or finish this up tomorrow. Until then, stay safe, stay sane, and be decent to each other. Toodaloo. As always.